Good evening, everybody. I would like to thank everybody who joins us at this time in Ukraine Media Center, Ukrinform. Thank you. Hello, everybody who is with us in this hall, in this studio. Today, we invited you for the press briefing upon the visit of the European parliamentaries for the interference in the democratic processes in other countries, including countering of disinformation. And I'd like to introduce our speaker and the head of delegation, Raphael Glucksmann, the head of the special committee. Good evening, Mr. Raphael. Welcome to Ukraine. And Mr. Raphael will tell us about the goals of the mission and first results of its work in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will speak in the name of our delegation, composed of members from different political groups. And I will first say that the European Parliament is very clear in the support of Ukraine. And the goal is Ukrainian victory. There is no other goal than Ukraine to win this war, because we perfectly know in the European Parliament, and especially in our Special Committee on Foreign Interference, that this war did not start on February 24th, and it did not limit itself to the borders of Ukraine. This war targets every single European democracy, and we are in this fight together. So that's the first message that we wanted to bring to Kiev. And then we wanted to see how we can improve our help and our support coming from the European Union, not only in terms of weapons, which we should do, not only in terms of sanctions, but also in terms of fighting together this battle of narrative, fighting together Russian manipulation of information and spread of fake news about the war and about the real targets of this war. And we worked with our Ukrainian friends from ministries, from presidential administration, from government, but also from civil society and from media, in order to shape this common front on this battle of information. Because it's not only a military battle, it's also a geopolitical and an information battle. And it's very clear that we are in this fight together, and that the European Parliament and the European Union should raise the support for Ukraine in this fight. So that's what we came to do, to deliver this message and to bring back to Brussels very concrete idea in order to step up the support that Ukraine is receiving.
Дякую вам, пане Рафаеле.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raphael. I'm sure our colleagues have questions to you, so please, dear colleagues, please let us know about any questions you're having. Please introduce yourself.
National media, Ivan Gosekin. Let me ask you about the situation inside the EU. Russia is also trying to attack the EU and try to spread its own informational narratives. How does the EU tackle this battle, the Russian narrative? I know that you sent back hundreds of Russian diplomats. How can this battle continue, and what you can learn from Ukrainian side in this? Thank you.
So first, sanctions against the Russian Federation, and we need to step up these sanctions. For instance, not all propagandists of the Russian Federation are on our list of sanctions. They should be. They are criminals. They are not just people spreading fake news. They are supporting a war which is a war of aggression, and they are supporting crimes against humanity. So they should be treated as are treated the military leadership of the Russian Federation or the political leadership of the Russian Federation. There is no difference for us. So they should be on the sanction list. Then we should break the propaganda machine of Russia. For instance, we took sanctions in the European Union against RT or Sputnik or other vehicles of Russian propaganda, but actually we did not stop them from spreading their lies and from acting as tools in this war. And so we should be much more active in this front. We should, for instance, I will take a very concrete example. Eutelsat, which is a French company, continues to spread a Russian propaganda channel, and including against the will of European members, I mean members of the European Union, like the Baltic states, who asked Eutelsat to stop broadcasting Russian propagandists, and Eutelsat is not doing it. So that's the kind of thing we should do much more actively. And then I think that if you want to fight Russian narrative, then you need to have yourself a clear narrative to oppose. And that's a question to political leadership in Europe, that we took 1 year before formulating clearly what was the strategic objective of the European Union in this war, which is the total defeat of the Russian Federation and the total victory of Ukraine. Now we start to have this narrative, but it should be much more explained and much more assertive. We should explain to the European audience that this war is also our war. And this is what our special committee is doing, working on Russian interference. And Russian interference is not only disinformation, it's also cyber attacks, it's also corruption, it's also strategic investments. We have seen the energy blackmail that has led Europe to apathy and compromisions with the Russian regime for so long. So we need to explain that much better to European audience and explain to them why, I mean, the support we are giving to Ukraine is not just because we love Ukraine, which we do, but it's because we love ourselves. And that actually right now, as we speak, Ukrainians are defending the whole Europe. And this is not said enough and not clearly enough to European audience. But I must say that this battle, we are still winning it inside European Union. But there are large parts of the world in which we are losing it. When you take Latin America, Africa, Asia, we have let, for 1 year, the door open to Russian propaganda in these regions of the world. And this has to stop. What we have to understand in Europe is that actually the role of European diplomats from now on should be to act for Ukraine. Not because they love Ukraine, once again, but because acting for Ukraine, it's acting for Europe. So we need to not only destroy Russian propaganda in these regions and bring back facts that oppose this propaganda, but also impose our own narrative much more assertively. And for that to happen, then you need to have a clear narrative. And that's why it was not done until now, because it was very vague what was coming out from the various European leaders.
У нас є ще питання.
We have more questions.
Bryan, Information Agency of Ukrainian MOD Ukrinform. So I have a question about the Global South. And during the last year of the full-scale Russian invasion, we have seen that these countries of Latin America, Africa, Indo-Pacific, Middle East, they are either neutral or support Russia. And also during the last year, we have seen more engagement of the West into Indo-Pacific. They were applied of strategies of Canada, US, European Union. So how do you see the information strategy of the EU in the Indo-Pacific, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it's not only Indo-Pacific, it's Indo-Pacific, Africa, Latin America. I mean, you can name them, Middle East. And, well, we come as supporter of Ukrainian fight, but we did not yet turn into full war attitude. And that's what we should do. And it's the same for production of ammunition. The same applies to battle of information. We are helping, but we didn't turn into wartime economy in Europe. And the same applies to information battle. We are debunking Russian propaganda. We are contradicting Russian propaganda, but we are not fully in the game. And that's what needs to be changed now. And if we say that we want Ukrainian victory, then we should act accordingly. And that's the role of Parliament, I think, is to remind executive branches that, well, you said finally, after all these months, that the strategic objective of the European Union should be the full victory of Ukraine and the total withdrawal of all Russian forces from Ukrainian territory as internationally recognized, then act accordingly. If really the future of Europe is at stake, then there are a lot of things to be done that are not done yet. As we speak, our sanctions still have loopholes. As we speak, our satellite broadcasters still broadcast Russian propaganda. As we speak, we are still hesitating to deliver long-range or even medium-range missiles to Ukraine. So we are not there yet. As we speak, our industry is still not working 24 hours, 7 days per week in order to produce ammunition. So our message is very clear when we come back to Brussels. It's that there is a time now for a mental revolution, which is just following our words and translating it into actions. And when you speak about Indo-Pacific, then it means that we need a much more confrontational approach in the informational space to what China is relaying as propaganda about Putin's war. And this is something that is not yet done. And that's why we think that, you know, there was this Rammstein of defense, which proved to be very efficient in terms of weapons delivery to the Ukrainian resistance. And we need a Rammstein of information. We need a Rammstein for the battle of narrative. And we also need to understand that the message that will be delivered, for instance, to European audience should not be the same as the one delivered to the global south. I will take a very simple example. Ukraine is portrayed in Russian propaganda as a tool of the West. And Russians are explaining that they are the anti-colonial power resisting to Western imperialism, yes? This appeals to some of the audience. But just the true narrative is that Ukraine is a former colonized power which asserts its independence against an imperial regime. And so Russia is the imperialistic regime and the colonizer there. And Ukraine is actually, should be the hero of all former colonies wishing to be free and independent. And this line was not spread in the right way in the global south. And this is something that Ukrainians should do, but we are here to help, obviously, because you are not covering, for instance, with your diplomatic service, the entirety of this south, and we are. So now, from now on, every EU delegation in the world should be your embassy.
Max Hunder, Reuters. It seems to me that the greater challenge around disinformation and the pushing of Russian narratives is on the internet. You've already talked a bit about broadcasters, but it seems to me that the great challenge is the internet, and particularly in Europe, Twitter, here, Telegram. I'm less familiar with how information is spread online in for instance, in Asia. That's not really my expertise, but I think WhatsApp's quite popular there, right? How do you deal with misinformation, disinformation that is spread by, let's say, for instance, as this is what I most often encounter, by a Twitter account without a name attached,
Yeah.
but lots of followers, but it's not an official organization or a name. How does, what would you sort of put forward to deal with that? Because that seems to be the most rampant problem right now.
Yes, you are right. And that's why in Europe, we were at the avant-garde of regulating social platforms. Because it cannot be that they run away from their responsibility forever. And so the responsibility should be put on the platforms themselves, that they have to cooperate in the fight against disinformation, or otherwise they will be judged responsible for the spreading of disinformation. We have passed legislations in Europe, the DSA, the DMA, which are, I think, very good legislation, because for the first time, the social platforms will have responsibility, and they will be responsible for the content that they are broadcasting. And so what we should do now is implement this legislation and negotiate with the platform with Ukraine, which means that for the moment, when Ukrainians are interacting with the platform, of course they receive welcoming attitude, because right now it's impossible to just dump them. But the truth is that if Europe is doing it with you, then there will be more weight in the balance. And so the main thing for us now is to make the platform understand that we are serious, which not all of them understood very clearly. And you were mentioning Twitter and Telegram, but you also have TikTok, which is spreading a lot of disinformation without ever taking any form of responsibility for it. And so they should be put in front of their responsibility, and we should be very blunt to them. That if they are used as tools in order to destabilize our democracies and spread Russian propaganda, then there will be consequences. And again, I mean, that was already before the war the mood in Europe to do that. So that we should just speed up and act. And when it comes to Telegram, then you have a different issue. Is that Telegram per se is based on the rejection of this kind of regulation. So then the consequence might be even tougher to Telegram than to the other ones.
У нас є останнє питання.
We have maybe one last question on the floor.
With the CNN, as you mentioned, the EU is now targeting some of their means of disinformation that Russia was using. After that has happened, has Russia been opening up new doors or using new tools for disinformation, something that you are noticing now? For instance, when you shut down, some of the stations broadcasting, have they gone, where they have put their misinformation to? Have they moved those resources to the social media, or maybe something new, that whatever your expertise, if you could share that? Thank you.
Yeah, they have moved mainly to the social media, but they were already very strong in the social media. So the thing is that when we have shut down RT and Sputnik, lots of people thought that, okay, that's the main thing because that's where the money goes, and so we are done. But this was like 3% of Russian disinformation in reality. And the RT and Sputnik were acting as content producers, but the spreading was not on RT's channel because the ratings were poor. It was in YouTube, it was in Facebook, it was in Twitter, it was on the social network. So basically when we made them stop to broadcast, it was just the first step, because they were still acting as content producers. So now, for instance, in France, their bank accounts were frozen, and they cannot even produce content. But we lost so much time. It should have been done the day after we took the sanctions. And now, what's happening is that they are investing their money through through other ways, other paths, and creating the same content that they were creating with Russia Today and broadcasting it without the stamp RT. But they have the same level of disinformation, plus RT and the others are still broadcasting in the south. and they are very, very powerful there. And more, I must say. So according to our analysis, their ratings are skyrocketing as we speak, which is super worrying because obviously the more people have access to their content, the further we are from rallying them to the support of Ukraine and Europe. So that should be a global fight. And we have an issue is that Russia and China have invested a lot, for instance, in Africa, when we were actually very passive. And now they are using their channels. And by the way, if you ask yourself about the position of China, then just look at what kind of narratives they are spreading. And you will understand very clearly that when they speak about a partnership that has no limits, that was the wording of Xi and Putin when they made this promise to the world to install a new world order. Well, that's what they are doing. They are spreading Russian propaganda everywhere they can. So that's why we need to change our attitude and understand that this is a global confrontation. It's not just that we need to send weapons to Ukrainian military on the front line, but that we should act as a part of this confrontation, not because we want it, but because this confrontation is targeting us. And for instance, I speak as a French. We have a Wagner group spreading lies about France for years from now on and putting in danger our soldiers, for instance, in African mission. And our reaction to it was very, very weak until now. So it's time to be a bit stronger.
Пане Рафаелю, я знаю, що нам
Mr. Raphael, we know that we have to let you go already, that we don't have a lot of time for further briefing. Thank you very much. Thank you. We want to thank your team for joining you here in the...
I just want to say that you are today in Ukraine the living and beating heart of Europe. And it's not just a sentence. It's something that we all, and again, we come from very different political parties, we all think and we all feel. When we come here, we feel that we come at the heart of Europe. And we perfectly understand that this war is also ours. And that your victory will be ours. And that your defeat, which will not happen, would mean the end of peace, stability, security, and freedom in the whole Europe. So when we insist in the parliament that the help you receive should be much bigger and much quicker, it's not because we do that out of solidarity for Ukraine. It's because we are selfish people. And we want you to succeed because it means that we will live in peace in the whole of Europe. So that's something that we came here with, but we will go back with a conscience of that is even greater and clearer, and repeat it to all Europeans, even those who have trouble to understand it, that from now on, the incremental policy of helping Ukraine step by step is over. We should deliver all the help we can at once and make sure that it helps Ukraine to reach quick victory in this battle that is a common battle for European democracy.
Дякую вам, пане Рафаелю, за ці слова. Вони надихають кожного українця. Дякуємо.
Thank you for these words, Mr. Raphael. Thank you for the systemic support you're providing. We continue working together for our victory and glory to Ukraine. Thank you.